Twice in the space of 6 years, one airline came within hours of switching off forever. Not sliding slowly into bankruptcy, switching off, aircraft frozen on the tarmac, crew sent home, an entire company about to blink out of existence in a single afternoon. And here's the strange part. If you saw one of its planes today, you would never guess it had ever been in trouble. Because this is the most colorful airline in the sky. Stripes wrap the whole way around the fuselage. Bright yellow, deep red, ocean blue, grass green. A jet that looks less like an aircraft and more like a beach towel that learned to fly. Nearly 10 million holidaymakers climb aboard those stripes every single year. The company that used to own it was the oldest travel firm on the planet, in business since 1841. When that company collapsed overnight in 2019, it stranded 600,000 travelers around the world and forced Britain into the largest peacetime rescue in its history. Every brand under that roof went dark. Everyone, except the planes with the stripes. They never stopped flying. This is Condor, Germany's holiday airline, the one that refused to die with its own parent. Born inside Lufthansa, sold to the company that turned the beach holiday into an industry. Orphaned twice, rescued twice, and today wrapped in the loudest paint in all of aviation. So how do you survive the death of the giant that owns you? Not once, but twice. And why is the company that created Condor now the one trying to finish it off? Let's get into it. Start with what Condor actually is, because most people outside of Germany have never heard the name. Condor is Germany's biggest leisure airline, not a flag carrier chasing business travelers in suits, a holiday machine built from the ground up to move sunseekers to warm places at a price they can afford. Around 9.5 million passengers a year, flying from 8 German airports to roughly 90 destinations across Europe, Africa, and the Americas. Beaches in Mallorca, islands in the Indian Ocean, Cancun, Havana, Mauritius, Phuket. If it has palm trees and a runway, Condor has probably flown there. Its home is Frankfurt, the busiest airport in Germany, where it is now the second largest airline behind only Lufthansa. And that word, Lufthansa, is going to come up again and again because you cannot understand Condor without it. Go back to the beginning. The date is the 21st of December, 1955. West Germany is rebuilding from the war, and a brand new company is registered in Frankfurt under a name nobody would remember today, Deutsche Flugdienst. It is owned by an unusual little club of 4. 2 shipping companies, Norddeutscher, Lloyd, and the Hamburg America Line, the national railway, Deutsche Bundesbahn, and the German flag carrier, Lufthansa. Shipping lines, a railway, and an airline, all pooling money to chase the same new idea. Ordinary Germans, for the first time, wanting to fly somewhere sunny for fun. The fleet was 3 British-built Vickers Viking propeller planes, 36 seats each. And the very first flight tells you everything about the era. It was not a beach at all. On the 29th of March, 1956, Condor's first tourist flight was a pilgrimage, a journey to the Holy Land in Egypt. But the beaches came fast. Within that first year, Mallorca and the Canary Islands were on the schedule, and a whole nation discovered that the Mediterranean was suddenly within reach. This is the airline that helped turn the package holiday from a luxury into something a normal family could book. Condor even calls itself the world's first leisure airline. That claim can be argued. What cannot be argued is that it was there at the very start of it. Now the name, because the name has a secret. In 1959, Lufthansa bought out the other partners and took full control. Then, in 1961, it swallowed a rival called Condor Luftreederei, a small carrier founded a few years earlier by the family behind Dr. Oetker, the pudding and frozen pizza empire. Lufthansa kept the better name, and Deutsche Flugdienst became Condor. But that name goes back much further than a pizza dynasty. It goes back to 1924 and to Brazil. In the 1920s, German companies set up an aviation venture in South America called the Condor Syndicate. Its job was to sell German aircraft abroad and to plant German influence in the skies over a continent. That venture helped give birth to the two oldest airlines in Brazil, including the ancestor of what would become Varig, once the largest airline in Latin America. The Condor Syndicate was eventually folded into the airline that became Lufthansa. So the joyful stripes that fly German families to the beach today carry a name that was first dreamed up almost 100 years ago by Germans trying to conquer the airways of South America. Most passengers boarding in Frankfurt have no idea. Well, now you do. Through the 1960s and 70s, Condor grew into a giant of the holiday business. The propellers gave way to jets, the Boeing 727, and later the Airbus A300. By the 1990s, Condor was flying the Boeing 757 and the Boeing 767, reaching further than any charter airline had before, out to 65 destinations and beyond. It became the launch customer for the stretched Boeing 757-300, the first airline in the world to order it. It was the first holiday airline to fit a proper, separate cabin class, so that a family heading to the Caribbean did not have to fly in one single, undivided box. For its 40th birthday, it even handed a Boeing 757 to the American pop artist James Rizzi, who turned the entire jet into a flying work of art. Year after year, German travelers voted it the country's most popular holiday airline. This was a confident, growing, deeply German success story. And in more than 60 years of flying, Condor has suffered exactly one fatal crash. It came on the 2nd of January, 1988. Flight 3782, a Boeing 737, was on a charter from Stuttgart to Izmir on the Turkish coast, at the time when Condor was a full subsidiary of Lufthansa. On final approach, in poor visibility, the crew switched on the landing system too late and missed the turn toward the runway. The aircraft flew into a hillside near Seferihisar. 16 people were on board. All 16 were lost. You will find websites that claim the plane was packed and that most survived. That is wrong. It was a lightly loaded winter charter, 11 passengers and 5 crew, and none of them came home. It is the single darkest day in the airline's history. And for an operation that has carried well over 100 million people, one accident in more than 6 decades is a record most airlines would envy. But that day is part of the story too. Now the turn. For most of its life, Condor was Lufthansa's child. But around the turn of the millennium, Lufthansa decided the holiday business was no longer where it wanted to be, and it began selling Condor into the world of package tours. The buyer was a British name almost every European grew up with, Thomas Cook. Over several years, the shares changed hands, and by 2009, Condor was a full member of the Thomas Cook empire. The German airline had left home. And for a while, life inside Thomas Cook looked comfortable. What almost nobody saw coming was that the parent was rotting from the inside. Thomas Cook was not just any travel company. It had been selling trips since 1841, more than 175 years. It ran hotels and airlines and shops in 16 countries and moved 19 million travelers a year. It was, quite literally, the oldest travel company on Earth. And on the 23rd of September, 2019, it collapsed. Not gently, overnight. Weighed down by billions in debt, it ran out of road, and in the early hours of a Monday morning, it stopped trading with immediate effect. The scale of the fallout is hard to imagine. 600,000 Thomas Cook customers were stranded abroad mid-holiday, their flights home suddenly canceled. In Britain alone, 150,000 people needed rescuing, and the government launched what it called Operation Matterhorn, the largest peacetime repatriation in British history. Around 900 flights. Aircraft chartered from all over the world, including a giant Airbus A380 leased from Malaysia Airlines to fly holidaymakers back from Mallorca. An entire replacement airline conjured out of nothing just to clean up the mess. And Condor? Condor was owned by Thomas Cook. By every ordinary rule of business, it should have gone down with the ship. Instead, something remarkable happened. The stripes kept flying. Condor announced that its planes would keep operating as normal, that there would be no rescue mission for its passengers. because its passengers were already being flown home on schedule by Condor. The morning its own parent died, the German airline asked its government for a lifeline, and Germany said yes. A bridging loan of 380 million euros, arranged through the State Development Bank, kept the aircraft in the air. A Frankfurt court threw a legal shield around the company to protect it from the wreckage of Thomas Cook. The orphan had survived, or at least round one. But here is where the story nearly ends for a second time. With Thomas Cook gone, Condor needed a permanent owner, and in January 2020, a rescuer appeared. The Polish Aviation Group, the state-owned company behind Polish Airlines, agreed to buy Condor. The deal was signed, it was approved, it looked done, and then the entire planet stopped flying. The coronavirus pandemic slammed into aviation in the spring of 2020. Borders closed, aircraft were parked in deserts, and demand for holidays evaporated in a matter of weeks. In April 2020, the Polish group walked away. The rescue collapsed. And for the second time in barely 6 months, Condor was staring straight at the end of the road, only now the entire industry was on fire around it. Once again, the German state stepped in with emergency money to keep the airline breathing through the worst of the pandemic. And then, in May 2021, a permanent owner finally arrived, from a direction almost nobody expected. Not another airline. An investment firm, Attestor, based in London, bought 51% of Condor. It committed 200 million euros of fresh capital, and another 250 million specifically to modernize the long-haul fleet. In July 2021, the European Commission approved a German aid and restructuring package worth around 525 million euros. The other 49% of the airline stayed in German hands, held on behalf of the federal government and the state of Hesse. After 2 near-death experiences, Condor finally had an owner with a plan and the cash to pay for it. And it spent that cash on a decision that shook the industry. For decades, Condor had been a Boeing airline on its long routes, flying the 767 around the world. Now, it walked away from Boeing entirely. In July 2021, it ordered the Airbus A330neo, the newest generation of Airbus widebody, to replace every single 767. The order started at 16 aircraft, then grew to 18, then to 21. Condor became the German launch customer for the type, and it marketed the jet with a very specific boast, calling it the 2-liter aircraft because it burns just over 2 liters of fuel per passenger for every 100 kilometers flown. The new Airbus widebodies did not just save fuel, they transformed the experience on board. Lie flat beds in business class, extra legroom in premium, and personal 4K screens at every single seat, with the entertainment finally free of charge, plus Wi-Fi in the sky. For an airline built on the cheap package holiday, it was a genuine leap upmarket. Then it did the same on the short routes, ordering dozens of Airbus A320neo and A321neo jets to replace its older Airbuses and its remaining Boeings. In March 2024, the last Condor 767 landed for the final time, flying in from Havana, and in 2025, the very last Boeing jet in the fleet was retired. Condor had become an all-Airbus airline. And then came the part everyone actually noticed. In April 2022, Condor tore up its old look and unveiled one of the boldest liveries any airline has ever worn. Gone was the quiet gray and yellow. In its place, thick stripes running the entire length of the fuselage in 5 different color themes. Yellow for sunshine, blue for the sea, red for passion, green for the islands, beige for the beach. The inspiration, the airline said, came from beach towels, sun umbrellas, and striped deck chairs. Some in the aviation world loved it. Some thought it looked ridiculous. Nobody ignored it. The stripes turned Condor from an airline you forgot into an airline you photograph. It even painted one jet pink to support breast cancer awareness, and another in the black and red colors of the football club Eintracht Frankfurt. In one move, Condor stopped being just a vacation airline and became a vacation brand. Which brings us to now, and to the twist that makes this whole story so strange. Condor today is, by its own numbers, back on its feet. In its most recent financial year, it carried around 9.5 million passengers, and its operating earnings jumped by roughly a quarter. It fills its planes better than almost anyone, and it holds a firm second place at Frankfurt. But it has a new enemy, and the identity of that enemy is the sharpest irony in modern aviation. It is Lufthansa. The very company that created Condor, owned it for 40 years, and then sold it off, is now its biggest rival, and it is squeezing. For years, Lufthansa fed Condor, connecting passengers into Frankfurt. Then, a German federal court ruling in 2024 ended that arrangement, forcing Condor to build its own network of feeder flights from scratch from cities like Rome, Vienna, and Zurich, just to fill its beautiful, new, wide bodies. Condor's own chief executive has said the quiet part out loud. Aviation, he argues, is a game of size, and right now Condor is simply too small to win it alone. In late 2025, its owner, Attestor, confirmed it is looking for a partner to give the airline the scale it needs to survive. So sit with the shape of this thing. An airline born inside Lufthansa, sold to the oldest travel company in the world, orphaned when that company died overnight, rescued by its government, abandoned again by a global pandemic, saved a second time by a London investment fund, refleeted from Boeing to Airbus, and repainted in the loudest colors in the sky. It has been declared all but dead twice, and twice it has come back, and now the same company that gave it life is the one applying the pressure that could decide whether it stands alone or gets swallowed all over again. Here's the real question, and I want to know what you think. Condor has proven again and again that it is almost impossible to kill, but surviving is not the same as winning. In an industry where the giants keep getting bigger, can a mid-sized holiday airline with gorgeous planes and a loyal following really make it on its own? Or is the next chapter of this story another sale, another owner, and maybe even a return to the arms of Lufthansa, the parent it escaped from in the first place? Tell me in the comments where you think Condor lands. If you made it this far, do me a favor and hit the like button and subscribe to ExPlaned, because it genuinely helps the channel grow and helps me keep making these deep dives. Thank you for watching this video. Stay safe, healthy, and kind, and I will see you in the next one.